Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Salmons, Methods Guru for Sage Methodspace, and I'm pleased to be joined by Helen Kara, independent researcher and scholar, and the author of a new book for Sage, Qualitative Research for Quantitative Researchers. But before we get started, if you are new to Methodspace, this is a blog community sponsored by Sage Publishing. And we are interested in all things to do with designing, planning, conducting, analyzing research, writing about it, sharing results in ways that will make a difference. And you can see at the heart of this diagram, we have teaching and learning, because we feel that whether you are an experienced researcher or someone who is just starting out, we all have something to learn. So Helen, why don't you begin by introducing yourself, and then we'll talk about your book.
Well, hello, it's lovely to be with you today. I'm an independent researcher. I've been one since 1999, and I've been an independent scholar since 2011. And one thing I'm slightly addicted to is writing books. I don't seem to be able to help myself. So yes, I've written these ones for Sage. Sage approached me to write the little quick fix books, which I enjoyed writing very much. You've written at least one yourself, Janet, and
Yes.
they're to a particular format, so they're an interesting writing challenge and a very specific length. But then I had an idea sometime later. It was prompted really by some conversations I'd been having online with people. My own first degree was purely quantitative. So I speak the language and I understand the kind of mindset, if you like. But since then, I've moved into doing much more mixed methods and qualitative research. And I was talking to people online who were quantitative researchers, but were needing to move into mixed methods research particularly, and sometimes right into qualitative work as well. And were saying, but it's so hard. What's epistemology anyway? It's really weird. I like my p-values. I know where I am with p-values. How do you get your head around all this stuff? And I thought, okay, there's a need here. And I had a look online to see if there was a book. And there actually was one written years and years ago, no longer in print, but there was nothing available for people now. So I thought, well, you know what? I could write this book. I've made this journey myself. I started off as a pure quant researcher, and I'm now mostly doing, I don't think I've done a single pure quant project since I became an independent researcher. So I'm now very much in this qual and mixed field. So I can write something helpful there. And early feedback suggests that it is. So that's quite pleasing.
Right. I think, certainly a trend towards more mixed methods types of research, and that was evident in the series of interviews I did recently with journal editors. I asked them, what are the methodological trends that you're seeing? And, I was curious at the time about whether, given all of the constraints that we've had with the pandemic, et cetera, whether people were more, leaning more towards using secondary data, existing data, big data, et cetera, that would be available. They said, no, the researchers they're encountering and the research interests they're encountering from their readers have to do with collecting data, generating data from participants, which, could be survey on a quantitative side, but, including that, more contextual background that they might get from interacting with participants in some way. So, for someone who is coming from a quantitative background who kind of goes like, well, I need to ask somebody why, I need to know what the story is behind this. Then, trying to figure out, where to start with qualitative research would seem to be a real need. So, maybe, talk a little bit about some of the topics that are included in this book.
Well, there's certainly quite a lot of information about mixed methods research, or multimodal research, as it's sometimes called, in recognition of the fact that mixed methods research was initially conceptualized as quantitative plus qualitative data. But now we're aware that research can be purely quant or purely qual and still be mixed methods.
Right.
Because, for example, you can collect one lot of data and then analyze it 3 different ways if it's qualitative data. So that's very much covered in the book. And what I've tried to do is understand, which I do, and start from the point that my readers, for a start, are likely to be researchers already, quantitative researchers. So they're not people who have no knowledge of research.
Right.
They're people who have learned the scientific method and have learned the inferential stats and have learned all that kind of thing. So I started off by looking at the differences and similarities, because actually qual and quant aren't anywhere near as different as a lot of people tend to think. There are a whole bunch of similarities, from the kind of principles of doing good research, of being systematic, of being rigorous, of being thorough, being quite meticulous, all of those kinds of things, right through to writing. We all use writing. Every researcher in the Euro-Western paradigm uses writing and needs narrative. However skilled a quantitative researcher may be, they can't just present tables of numbers or pages of figures. They need a narrative to say this trend is like this because, and this outlier is important because, or can be disregarded because, and explain what's going on in that data. Then there's a whole bunch of stuff about how to design qualitative research. Oh, there's a chapter about the use of theory in qualitative research, which I have to say, one of the TypeScript reviewers was very complimentary about it, described it as brilliant, which I was rather pleased with. I think I might have to frame that, put it on my wall. But then goes through the sort of design process, data gathering, looks at mainstream and alternative methods of gathering data, analyzing data, different ways to do it, and how to report on qualitative research, and some information about presenting and disseminating, because there are some qualitative methods there which could also be useful for quantitative researchers, but are perhaps particularly appropriate often for qual.
Right. So I think probably books that, you certainly, there are lots of books out there about qualitative research design, but as you say, they might be a bit intimidating, or kind of, where do I really start with this, kind of response by readers. So it sounds like, you're in a way kind of doing a little translation, it's kind of taking, well, here's what you already know from your experience as a quantitative researcher, and how can we then bridge from that to new ideas, so that you're starting, from a point that they're already knowledgeable and comfortable with.
Yes, absolutely that. And also a couple of other things. One is showing a bit of the history. I mean, Q methodology was one of the first mixed methods approaches, and that was generated, I think, in the 1930s. So it's 90 years old. People often think these approaches are very, very new, but they're not as new as you might think. But also, I love to demystify research and its associated processes, writing as well. But I think we need to be able to explain things simply.
Right.
I think this is a value that's very much in accordance with Sage's wider values. The days when we showed our cleverness by using long words in extremely long sentences are long gone, I'm glad to say.
Right.
And I think people are now understanding that it's actually cleverer to explain a complex concept simply than to just, pepper your words with lots of jargon and complication. So again, one of the things I've tried to do with this book is make things simple, which doesn't mean making them stupid or dumbing them down, but making them really clear and accessible. That's been very important to me, because of course this will be read by researchers from probably pretty much all disciplines, or most disciplines anyway, certainly all STEM disciplines, and quite a lot of humanities disciplines, and no doubt perhaps even some arts and social sciences disciplines. So I need to be able to speak to all of those people. So using disciplinary jargon or technical terms isn't going to help. So I've really tried to make it readable and accessible. And again, early indications are that, that this is working, which is good.
Well, good. It would seem to me that this would be a book that, certainly could be adopted as a text, but probably has even greater use by people who are already in the field, or people who are perhaps, working at the doctoral level on a dissertation or a thesis, and perhaps even, trying to do a literature review that involves, being able to understand a wide range of research. So even if someone was planning to do their own research using quantitative methods, still, having the kind of background about the research problem and the kind of, what prior research that's been done about that problem, to be able to really understand that in a way that, as you say, would help them to develop that narrative. This kind of book would be useful.
I think so. And for another reason too, I mean, I think for quantitative researchers, even if they're never going to do qualitative research, there's great value in understanding it.
Right.
Because they're almost certainly at some point going to want to refer to or read some qualitative research in their field. And same the other way around. I mean, there's a different book published by Sage on quantitative research for qualitative researchers, which is potentially also very useful, because I think we all need to be able to understand both, so that we can assess journal articles, research reports, and not just take them at face value, but have some way of checking their quality. And you need a decent level of understanding, or you can't do that. Right.
And to be a collaborative partner on projects, or even, presentations, and that sort of thing. So it certainly seems that this would be a useful book. And I hope our Methodspace readers will take a look at it. We'll include a link for you so you can look at the table of contents, and hope that you'll consider this as a part of your, personal library, or your kind of suggested readings for your students. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think that's just about covered it, except that I had a lot of fun writing this book, and I'm quite proud of it, and I hope it will help a whole bunch of people.
Yes, let's hope so. Because I think we're in a time where we have a, perhaps even more important than, previous times, the need to have disciplined, well-designed research, and to be able to explain it and counter, some of the kinds of disinformation and misinformation out there. So, having a better sense of what makes quality research of various types, is useful just, to citizens as well as to the research community. So thanks for telling us about this book, and I hope that you'll find a lot of readers.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.